and the ambitions of this country really come to the fore. Let's start with you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. First of all, before I answer that question, I just like to remind all of us what Mr. Scindia talked in his talk about Chandrayaan-3. Now, how did Chandrayaan-3 happen? Chandrayaan-3 happened because there were people who believed that we could do it. There were people in the government who believed that those scientists, and if you looked at those scientists, they're not fancy scientists like NASA. They believed they could do it, and there were a lot of women, young people in all this. Now that is the name of the game that is going to propel India forward. And I'll give you another historical example of this. In 1940, when the World War II was just about beginning, England and France was under attack from Germany. And Roosevelt was the President of the United States. And England had just about depleted its military hardware because they were getting demolished at a very heavy rate from the bombardment of the German forces. And there's a book on this, by the way. It's called Freedom Forge. And France, similar things were happening. So Churchill went to Roosevelt and said, can you help us and produce weapons and equipments? And these were artillery guns, aircrafts, trucks, machine guns, shells, you name it. That time the US Congress refused to get into this war because they thought politically this is not a very wise decision. So Churchill, being the smart man he was, and so was Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, they came up with this whole concept of lend and lease. So they were not selling equipment. They were lending equipment and getting a lease rent for it. And in 3.5 years, 4 years, 1940 to 1944, I have the numbers, but I'll tell you by memory, the United States produced something like 285,000 aircrafts for the Allied. 285,000. Produced something like 200 submarines, 100 battleships, more than 100,000 artillery guns. I don't know how many lakh trucks and machine guns. Today we have a hard time producing even 10 aircrafts a year. Now, in terms of value, what they produced in 4 years in the United States between 1940 and 1944 was equal to about $3 trillion today. And this is what made America a superpower. And how did it happen? He called the president of General Motors, a guy called Bill Knudsen. He said, you leave your job, come to Washington, and take on this activity of creating an entity to make military hardware. Similarly, he called 2-3 other guys. Now, this is what made America great. And you're beginning to see this similar thing happening in India. What ISRO has done in Chandrayaan-3, what a lot of other people are doing, is going to make India great again. And if you read the McKinsey report, it says that for the next 10 years, India will contribute almost 20% of the growth in the world economy. So there are a lot of good things that are going for us. Largely, the young population that India has, the education system that India has, the entrepreneurship capability that India has, and of course, tremendously strong political leadership that India has today. I mean, these are all, let's say, the tailwinds that we have. We do have headwinds too. It's not that everything is going for us. There is a lot of areas in the world where there are conflicts, there are issues, there are geopolitical problems, and in which direction it affects us, we can't predict today. It's very difficult to predict today. But all I can say with a lot of confidence that the next generation, I mean, our time is over. The next generation has tremendous capability and the will to do a lot of things. And this is what will propel India forward.
Mr. Reddy, talking about the next generation, Mr. Kalyani very eloquently talked about the whole defense story and how it can actually power a country's entire ambition for decades. But equally, we have the IT story, which is a sector you belong to. How do you think the whole resilience story has been playing out at a time when global headwinds have been hitting us regularly, including in the IT sector? The global markets are looking challenging. What exactly do you think is powering the Indian ambition in the IT sector?
First, let me thank you for inviting me for your event this evening. I think first I'd like to paraphrase that this industry, which is being so strongly being called as IT, information technology, is no longer information technology. It has morphed itself to be a technology industry. When was it called as information technology? Was when information was aggregated together by computers and provided as reports to people for them to take decisions. Fast forward now, where we live at this point of time, what we find is it's not you're gathering information, then aggregating together and bringing it for decision making. It's real time, and in many instances, technology itself is helping you taking the decisions. Or I'll probably rephrase it further, that technology itself takes its own decisions. So where are we at this point of time is that, as Mr. Baba Kalyani said, we have got onto the moon, enormous amount of belief in ourselves, there's no denying it all. Coupled with that is the environment that got created, be it infrastructure, it is education, it's entrepreneurship, all these have happened. But equally important is that we are at a point of time in the world where technology is at its best. I keep joking with people that I wish I was born now compared to when I was born. Primarily because the pace at which the change is coming in, which is opening up so many opportunities, is something which was not imaginable. In the past, we were collecting for information. The technology was used, information technology it was. Now, you can name any industry that you can think about, and I'll tell you how technology is playing a very important role in it. Whether it's agriculture, whether it is logistics, or healthcare, education, you name it. So what we are therefore seeing is that this industry will not slow down. This industry has to re-morph itself, revitalize itself to address the new reality that's there. A reality which is being driven by technology, which will continue to change at a pace never been experienced in the past. So which effectively would mean that we will see more amount of changes, which is effectively meaning that we need to have organizations which are agile, organizations which are continuously learning, organizations which are innovative. And I think today the good news is that this $250 billion IT industry is very really embracing this new reality of addressing the market which is much larger, but with newer dimensions that are there. So I'm very confident that this industry will continue to grow. Our forecast right now is it will continue to grow at a CAGR of 10% on a base which is very large at $250 billion.
But Mr. Reddy, to counter your comment on growth of the industry, there are global headwinds which are also going to affect the industry because it's ultimately an industry which is global. How does the sector then, technology sector, counter that?
I think there are two things that are there. One is that we are seeing one very positive development, that is the Indian market is opening up. Till now, the usage of technology in India was very, very poor. And there were also reasons why these large IT companies did not address the Indian market. Given, there was so much of hassles associated with doing business in India, cost of doing business, and so on and so forth. Whereas now, that has opened up in a big way.
The digital transformation.
Digital transformation that's happening. And digital transformation, you took words out of my mouth, is happening all around the world. And therefore, we're not still seeing it so clearly, but it is opening up several other industries rather than the very traditional industries like BFSI. BFSI was banking, finance, insurance, was 30% of our addressable market. Whereas now, we think even agriculture will have at least 5% of the addressable market. That transformation, we think, right now, you talk about headwinds is also because of some of the automation that's happening. But I think every time that you had a big leap in technology, certainly it took time to settle. Once it settles down, we'll see that big push back again. So the average growth rate is what I'm saying is about 10%.
Mr. Mehta, you actually represent a company which is magical in the truest sense. It's really a story which stands for resilience and actually a symbol of the Indian story across the world. It's a pride of India. What do you think? How do you think Amul as a cooperative, as a company, has re-engineered itself over the years? And what do you think needs to be done as the whole ecosystem around you changes?
Okay. To talk about the future, one has to go back to the past. Yes. And let's rewind just 50 years back. Let's go back to the first issue of India Today, which came sometime in 1975. The cover page of the first cover page of the India Today magazine had a woman in a gungat. It also had a story on the White Revolution. That's the time when the India's White Revolution began. And over the last 50 years, we've seen India becoming the largest producer of milk in the world. Our organization, the Gujarat Cooperative Milk Marketing Federation, was formed around the same time. Today, it is the largest food company in India, FMCG company in India, with a turnover of more than 72,000 crores. And imagine that woman, lady in a ghungat, 36 lakh such women who are owners of brand Amul, every day getting 200 crore rupees in their bank accounts and more than 60,000 crores annually. So this is the journey of empowerment of women using a cooperative model which has made India proud, and milk is the largest agricultural crop of our country today. India today produces close to 22% of the total milk in the world. After 10 years, it will be about 33%. By 2047, another 25 years, it will be close to 47%. तो याद रखना आसान है, every year we add to the calendar, India's contribution to the world will increase by 1% every year. So this is the journey which has happened, which is giving livelihood to more than 10 crore families in the country. And we talk about resilience, we talk about empowerment, we talk about sustenance and sustainability. All this is fitting in very well in the milk story, which India has for the world. And we want to see a scenario, and it is very much real, that India not only becomes dairy to the world, this model of women-led development becomes a showcase for what is all for the developing countries for the world. And this is where Amul comes in to play a role, not only building the brand India, brand Amul around the world, but also the model of development using the cooperatives to be a showcase for all the South-South developing countries of the world. And this is the opportunity we see for our farmers and for our country to rise and shine in the times to come.
I think women-led development is also a very key part of the G20 agenda. The Prime Minister spoke about it also in our interview the other day. I think that's very important what you said, because the cooperative model, much like the DPI, which is sort of a gold standard for the world can be a gold standard for the rest of the world to emulate, and with a women-led centricity around that. Mr. Kalyani, I come back to you. What do you think, you spoke about the journey of countries through defense and etc. But what I want to know is, how do you see the entrepreneurship ecosystem playing out? You've been one of the foremost entrepreneurs of this country. How do you see the entrepreneurship ecosystem now shaping up? And what do you see as the sort of future trajectory on that front?
You know, with the average age of our population being close to 30 years or so, with the number of young people that come out of universities and educational institutions, and with the kind of opportunities that are made available by platforms which the government has built. I gave one example. You talked about the UPI. UPI is not just a gold standard. UPI is a platform that has been built by the government that is available to millions of Indians to build a business without any cost. Because if you didn't have the UPI platform and you wanted to build a fintech business, even a small fintech business, you would have to spend a huge amount of money upfront to build that business. Today you can do it for free. So, you know, this whole concept and what Mr. Reddy talked about, technology, we are just entering the whole age of artificial intelligence. Actually, the artificial intelligence discussion started somewhere in between the B20 deliberations. It wasn't there 6 months ago. I think it kind of just, when the ChatGPT was announced, that whole discussion started. I mean, these are technologies that are disruptive, but they are disruptive in a very positive way. And you look at India, I mean, what has India got that other countries don't have? I talked about population. Now, India is a country where digital technology is understood by more number of people than the rest of the planet. If you talk to any Indian, a kid, he will tell you what the moon is and how the surface of the moon is. And you talk to any kid in the United States, you probably wouldn't be able to answer that question. So there is a lot of difference today in terms of how people in this country think and what their aspirations are and what they want to do. And this is what drives entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, what is entrepreneurship? It's passion, it's aspiration, and it's a goal. And if you have an enabling environment to make it happen, like the UPI platform, there will be other digital platforms that will come. The UNDC platform, which is coming for e-commerce. Today, anybody can set up an e-commerce business without having to spend, millions of dollars, which, the earlier people had to spend. And so this is the advantage of technology that India is able to harness, which not many people are able to harness.
But Mr. Reddy, to take off from the issue of entrepreneurship and also the new sectors which are coming up, I think one area which I would like you to dwell a moment on and discuss with us is that of skilling. And I'll come to Mr. Kalyani and Mr. Mehta also on that aspect, because when we talk about new technologies in particular, the way you use technology, one area is skilling. There are several jobs which are needed to be provided, and the jobs have to find the right kind of people to do them. So how does that challenge play out, and can it, you think, pose a serious challenge for a country like India in its journey to 2047?
Thank you. Great question. Certainly, I think that's a very critical element for success of this nation, the skilling part of it. But I think the government of India has done extremely well in forcing this challenge and introducing the new education policy 2020. Now, NEP 2020, you might say it's education. No, it completely encompasses skilling too. And the core of NEP 2020 says all about student-centric experiential learning. That's basically when you say experiential learning, you're bringing this element called skilling into it. So therefore, I think now if you look at the way in which, of course, NEP 2020, I wouldn't get into it, is a large framework. Now, there are a number of elements associated with it which are being executed. One of the elements I'll also further call out is that it talks about much closer interaction between the academia and the industry, which was wide open. People were living in their own worlds. So what we are seeing at this point of time is with this interaction moving in, a number of ways in which we are in a position to bridge this gap in terms of skilling. The apprentice schemes, the internship schemes are running very well. We are now moving, we are now inviting people with great amount of experience to come and teach at our education institutions as professors of practice. We are doing the vice versa too at this point of time. So therefore, skilling is not becoming something which is away from education as such. We want to get it absolutely imbibed into the education system itself. So therefore, as a result of number of these interventions that are happening, what we are finding is many of these students are ready for the industry. They are employable. One would also say that there is yet another challenge we have. If you look at our own industry, which is the so-called IT industry, which has 5.6 million professionals. Now, these are not professionals who came into industry last a year back, 2 years back, or 5 years back. They've been even with the industry for 30 years. Enormous amount of transformation that has happened. In those instances, there's absolutely necessity at this point of time that we need to upskill them and reskill them. That's how we thought about this way back in 2017 when I was the chairman of NASSCOM, of creating a platform called the Future Skills Platform, which we identified 8 digital skills that are there, starting off with AI, ML, VR, AR, and so on and so forth. So interventions of this nature are certainly bridging the gap. But I think the bigger problem that we also have further is we also have to become a product nation as opposed to purely being services nation. Those skills are far different from what we see as services. And that has to now, which means that the intensity of knowledge within the individual has to go up. That intervention is happening at the education level. It is to be in the college system. Or one more step behind it, I'll stop with that, is also innovation to come by. And innovation is also now becoming an integral part of the schooling system, the higher education, and thereafter coming into the industry.
Mr. Kalyani and Mr. Mehta, closing comments on the road ahead. Mr. Kalyani, you go first. The road to 2047, the key challenges as you see it, and what is your thoughts on those?
The road ahead to 2047 is simple in terms of definition, quite complex in terms of making it happen. Simple in terms of definition is we want to be a high-income country, high per capita income country, not a low, not a 5,000 rupee per capita country, because we have a large population. You multiply that, you'll still have a big number. We need to do things what Mr. Reddy talked about, products. And there are many areas, and I'll give you just a couple of examples which are in the news every day nowadays. Semiconductors. We lost the semiconductor race in the 80s when there was an opportunity to set up a semiconductor plant. Because of bad policy decisions, we lost that race. Electronics, medical equipments, a lot of ingredients that are required for our medical medicines. So those are the things that we need to produce. Now, it's not great rocket science of how to produce it, but it is a lot of effort, time, and resources.
Amul, already getting into the product thing with your other newer products which you've added to your core product of dairy, Mr. Mehta?
Yes, couple of things which will become more important for us. I mean, 20, 30 years back, we were talking about atta dal chawal. Now we are talking about tomatoes and pyaj. And future we'll be talking about protein, carbs, fats, calories and all that. And that's where milk as a superfood will play a very, very important role. And dairy becomes a very important source of nutrition. The other part we mentioned is organics. And I would go back to Ms. Kalipuri, who asked a question in the earlier session, whether we can live longer and longer enough. We can't live long enough if we are eating food with pesticides, food made with chemical fertilizers. And that's why Amul has got into this space of organics. We are trying to connect the producers who want to produce organic items, democratize organic, make it available to consumers in a variety of form at an affordable price so that India becomes a healthier nation.
And an organic and strong growth path for India as well to
Yes,
2047.
absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's really been a pleasure discussing this.
Thank you, gentlemen, for yet another insightful session. I'd like to call on stage Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor, Business Today TV, to express a token of gratitude to our esteemed panel.